Soul.
This is Bass Talk Live. Your host, Mark Jeffries and Matt Pangrack. BTL is brought to you by Lowrance, Lose, Strike King Lures, Bass Cat Boats, Ducket Fishing, Spro, APCO, Big Bite Baits, Sunline, and TH Marine. BTL coming at you. Good Monday, everybody. Welcome once again to another edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we're going to talk bass fishing and anything else that we want to talk about. Matthew, I got to tell you, dude, it was just an outstanding weekend this past weekend. Can't tell you how good it was.
Personally, professionally, from a fishing standpoint, a bowling standpoint, what are we talking about, Jeffries?
All of the above. I had one down moment during the entire weekend.
What was that?
I watched the little NHL action because I could care less about the NBA.
Oh, that was a heartbreaker. But
Did you watch it?
It's a round robin deal, so
I know,
it's just
I know.
for seeding.
Have you ever seen a goal scored like that, though?
I'm assuming you're talking about so they're doing this deal in the bubble where they have like two main host cities. And
Edmonton
all the
and Toronto.
NHL guys live in the bubble. And then if you were inside the playoffs before the pandemic hit, you have a round robin where you play 3 games to seed. And then if you were outside, then you play a best of 5 series against someone else. So there's guys that are in a series and then guys that are... So the Blues, who are the defending Stanley Cup champions.
My favorite
Mark
team.
Jeffries and I both are our favorite NHL team.
Yes.
Had a good year before the pandemic, and they're in the round robin play. So really, I mean, they could lose all 3. They'll just be a lower seed.
Yeah.
But they're anyway, 1-1 tie. And who were they playing? The
Avalanche.
Avalanche. Were they?
Yeah.
And the Avalanche guy hits the post with less than a second left. It rebounds. Guy scores with 0.1 second left to win 2-1.
Yeah.
0.1 second.
You ever seen that before? I'd never seen that before. Ever.
Brandon Polin. Jacob Poroznik's bedfish on
I was talking about hockey.
not Sam Rayburn, on Toledo Bend to win his first Elite Series tournament.
Yeah, the buzzer
pretty
beater.
dang close to a 0.1 second fish there.
Yeah. The buzzer beater to me is always a Takahiro thing, even though it's totally...
Oh, the classic thing?
Yeah.
Well, he scored like... His was more equivalent to you pull the goalie and score 3 goals in a minute. Would you not agree with that, though? This was just a one-time deal.
Yeah, but just a fun weekend. Dude, I got to tell you, I just thoroughly enjoyed all the action that I watched on ESPN2. Brandon Polinick getting it done. I want to let everybody know we will have Brandon on the show tomorrow. Enormously entertaining. On Sunday, I just kind of kicked back and did some work and was intrigued by the flurry that Polinick had on the final day.
Yeah, it was really impressive.
Yeah.
And going into this thing, we talked to Zona and we were talking about how much the smallmouth versus the largemouth would play. And I totally missed the boat. Ticonderoga did not play at all.
No.
You guys were dead on with the ball and chain. We saw Jamie Hartman.
Yeah.
And I believe Seth Fider even threw it a little bit, and a number of different guys that were in the top that were throwing the Carolina rig. We saw cranking. We saw punching for largemouth. We saw drop shotting for smallmouth. Really just a perfect tournament. Right at actually 80 pounds, 1 ounces. to win, much to the chagrin of our friend Kurt Dove, who picked the top fantasy team. But also there's this other guy named like Dave Boy who also picked it. So the difference is you get like a $200 Rapala Cull scale for second. For first, you get a $2,500 gift certificate. $500. It's worth like $4,500. Well, the Birdman picked only 80 or 78 pounds to win.
Okay.
This other guy was 1 ounce off the winning weight. So Kurt Dove, who fishes the pro circuit, is qualified for the Elite Series. He's the only guy who's qualified, 3 times?
I think so.
Missed out on winning the entire fantasy fishing on a tiebreaker on overall weight. He was bummed out.
It happens.
He said, I talked to him yesterday. He said, man, I sucked at Chickamauga. Man, I sucked at the river. And I lost fantasy fishing on the tiebreaker. He goes, it could have been a $25,000 swing in 4 weeks. He said, instead, I traded that $25,000 for a Rapala Cull scale.
Yeah.
Anyway, that gets way off topic, but I thought
really
that was
did,
interesting.
But it really did.
But
anyway,
yeah, you saw everything come into
dude,
play.
It was a dream tournament for me to watch. Kobe Krieger throwing the spook.
That was cool.
Oh my gosh, dude! Now
And
do you
Pop
understand?
Art?
Do you understand why I like Lake Champlain so much?
Yeah,
dude. If I could live on a lake, that might be the lake. I've said that for a zillion times. I love that lake. It's got the 2 favorite things that I love to do. Top water.
Have you ever heard
Carolina
anyone say
Red.
anything bad about Lake Champlain, though?
Only when it gets rough. And
Well,
only
yeah.
when you make the run to Ticonderoga and it doesn't pan out.
But the fishing, as far as the fishing on Lake Champlain,
unbelievable,
I don't
man.
know anybody who's like, the one I'm really terrified of is
Yeah.
that, the one that I'm not looking forward to is that Lake Champlain.
Yeah.
I've never heard anyone say that.
Yeah. Hey, good show today. We're going to have Paul Mueller on. He's on a tear once again this year. Had a great New York swing. Second place at the SLR, 14th at Champlain. Plus, he's already got a win this year. So we will get him on here in about 10, 15 minutes. But, dude, I got to tell you this. All right, Saturday, I was at the equivalent of a BFL bowling tournament.
Okay.
And guess what they had on the monitors in the bar,
ESPN2.
in the settee
Brandon
area?
Polinick battling it out against Jamie Hartman and Seth Feider and David Mullins all day long.
I had people coming up to me all day long asking questions. Now, while all of this is taking place, dude, going into the final game, I'm leading the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Leading the whole thing, and I still have people coming up to me wanting to talk fishing.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And I kind of hung on by a strand to get the W on Saturday and won a nice
you
little...
won?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, congratulations.
Averaged almost 240. Just bowled extremely
How much?
well.
What is the payout?
$1,000.
It's like a BFL.
Yeah, like a BFL.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
How many people bowled in it?
Oh, there was like 60.
Oh, that's more than entered the Toyota series on Wheeler Lake this past weekend.
But oh wow.
For the iTunes listeners,
just
Mark's
fell
microphone literally just came. Usually
I
Mark
don't know
comes
how that happened.
unglued, but his microphone just came unscrewed.
Well, here, let's do this.
Are you going to hold it?
Just for a minute.
And then we're going to take a
then you're
break?
No. Then you can talk and I'll fix it real quick. All right. The point that I was trying to make while I was bowling in this bowling center, the people were more intrigued about what was taking place on the monitors than what was going on the lanes. Now, I'm kind of over-exaggerating a little bit, but, dude, I'm telling you, there were 4s, there were groups of 5, obviously social distancing there around the monitor. But they were intrigued by what was going on ESPN2, and they were asking me all kinds of questions about it. It was really cool, man. It was, I was in heaven.
Yeah, it was cool. Obviously, we don't want to forget the fact that Tom Monsoor, 71 years old, probably you put the home field advantage right up there with Biffle on Fort Gibson, Christie on Grand, that type of thing. What he does with the swim jig over the past 30 years on the Mississippi River out of La Crosse, Wisconsin is legendary, and he got it done over there in the FLW Super Tournament, which I have some numbers that I want to break down, but I also want to go back to what went down on ESPN2 and some things that I couldn't get past thinking about it after the tournament. And I called you up, and on a scale of 1 to 10, how fired up was I after that?
Oh, you were 10.
I was a 10.
You were 10. I can't believe this mic came off. Like
yeah,
this.
I'm gonna talk for a second here,
Okay,
Mark,
so can I fix it?
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely have time to fix it because you probably have to turn yourself down. Jeffries has we have new microphone technology, and it's actually screwed into the top of the microphone. Jeffries is now trying to screw it back into the mic so he's not holding it like one of those guys who does the interviews holding a lapel. Anyway, so I'm watching this on ESPN2, and you could tell what I thought Bass did a really good job of was going back, and they had little set pieces with Jamie Hartman, with Brandon Polinick, with Seth Feider that went back to fish catches from last year. It went back to some of their history, some of their wins. So the average guy who had no idea who Jamie Hartman was, who was tuning into it, could go back and say, okay, I see why they call this guy the Hammer. I see why Seth Feider is such a favorite up here. So it kind of put it into context. And it occurred to me, dude, what they're doing now is they're making these guys into superstars. I mean, the average person who's watching it, who doesn't seek out, and I'll say it, MLF, the BPT on the Discovery Channel or the Outdoor, the guys who don't seek out that, who are in the bar, who are in the bowling alleys watching the ESPN2, those are the guys that they know now. Those are the guys that they have name association with, that they recognize. And I feel like this whole past 2 years and everything that has gone down, how much the main focus, I feel like, has been the most overused term ever, growing the sport, creating a platform and turning this into a real sport, air quotation marks, that is mainstream, that the general public could get behind. Would you not agree with it?
100%.
And the catalyst driving all this were the 80% of Elite Series anglers who left for the Bass Pro Tour, and this vision to turn this into bigger and more than what it was, with more exposure and non-endemics and getting people interested in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, the Elite Series just did that. The Elite Series just did that.
Yeah, I agree. It was a perfect storm, dude.
And you can say, oh, well, it's because of the programming with the pandemic. It's because... I don't care how it got done. As a result, I mean, like I said, I don't think this would have gotten done. It wouldn't have been like this had the Major League Fishing not happened. But everything that Major League Fishing is trying to capture with the BPT, the Elite Series just kicked ass. And there's no other way to say it.
No, I agree. And I think there's
four
letters,
a platform.
There's 4 letters with a number that really, really push that past that point. You know what that is?
ESPN.
2.
That's
right.
I mean, there's no other way to say it. What those guys left for in hopes of achieving, they were at home on their couch watching it happen on ESPN2. That's the truth.
They got a lot of work to do, Matthew. And I don't know if they're going to get to that point. I really don't. With the challenges that lie ahead. And it was interesting because there were some comments being made that this may continue. Did you pick up on that?
It sounded like there's some real optimism for the St. Clair event coming up, and then also the remaining events throughout the year.
Yeah.
So
how do you feel if you're one of the sponsors of Bass right now?
You have to feel extremely optimistic,
especially if you're getting that exposure on ESPN2 for nothing.
Absolutely. And think about, and I made this point on the phone to someone afterwards, because I was fired up. I was like, listen, I was going to go fishing on Sunday. I had the boat ready. I was going to go. And I said, man, this is too good. I got to watch this. So what I did, I went to Bass Pro Shops. I spent $40. I bought a bottle of Boat Bling, and I bought a bottle of that Starbright hull cleaner. Yeah. And I detailed the links for 3 hours without a shirt on, which was a horrible mistake.
Get a little
very
burn
sunburned there.
Yeah.
And I had my phone plugged into my console running through my truck, and it was on the back tailgate, and I watched
you're all wired up.
Watched it for 3 hours, and then I put a shirt on, and I got a cold beer, and I sat on the porch, kicked my feet up on the Yeti. That was a gift. I would never buy a Yeti at full price.
Nice plug there.
Keeps things very cold, though.
Yeah.
Good job, Casey Ashley. And watched the weigh-in and drank 2 beers while I watched the weigh-in and was excited when Jamie Hartman was coming up. I mean, that's what it was all about. I got off on a big tangent here. What was the whole point of what I was? Where was I going?
You're just going, man.
Where was I going with that?
I don't know.
Where was I going with that?
I don't know.
It was bad.
Last thing
awesome.
I know, you got your shirt taken off and you're sunburned and you're kicking back drinking beer, watching the weigh-in. That's all I know.
Yeah, it was the first time that I felt like a true fan watching something that I was like, this is the deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm fired up over it.
Dude, it was cool. I don't know what else to say.
I mean, other people that are going to see it and be like, fishing, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
But that didn't happen at the bowling center, dude.
No, I know. What
That
I'm
did
so
not
excited
happen.
about is that it represented professional fishing incredibly well.
Yeah.
With the characters that were in it, and then not to mention, you go back to the history of what Brandon Polinick had done, winning the Bass Nation, coming on, building his reputation on bass, leaving for the BPT, the drama that was created when him and Swindle left the BPT for the Elite Series, then coming back in come from behind fashion on a smallmouth fishery. That's where I was going with it. You talked about the sponsors. Do you think the sponsors were happy? So what does Brandon Polinick do this offseason besides I don't know if it's a big deal. It could be. I mean, he's got the hat and the shirt and all that stuff on with X-Zone Lures, right?
Yeah.
Reputable, they make the Slammer and all that. Reputable plastics company. I would not put them in the category of a Pure Fishing or Pradco, though.
Not even close.
But, man, think of the exposure that they got throughout that whole thing, and Brandon fishing with that X-Zone Slammer and all that stuff. I mean, that is return on your investment. On a national platform.
I have 4 things on this tablet that I was just mesmerized by. 4 things, Matthew. The first one, I was so entertained by what Seth Feider was doing in the marinas. That was cool. Catching those largemouth in the marinas around the boats and the boat docks and the little grass flats and all that stuff and everything. That was number 4. Number 3 was Kobe Krieger catching them on a topwater. Are you there? Are you okay?
I knew you would be all over Kobe Krieger. You had guys on live where at one point they went from Jamie Hartman Carolina rigging to Kobe Krieger on a topwater, and I was like, Jeffries is losing his mind right now.
It was unbelievable. And then the second thing was Jamie Hartman throwing a Carolina rig and really giving everybody a lesson that there's more to it than just the ball and chain. Okay? And then the number one thing was the flurry that Polinick went through on the final day. That 45 minutes or whatever it was, I just sat there looking at the screen, totally mesmerized by what was taking place and how that flurry happened, and he had to have that flurry to get the win.
Yeah, it was very impressive.
It was unreal, man.
I wouldn't say lost in all this, but one of the cool stories that's starting to emerge this year is, to me, the Japanese anglers that have been on the Elite Series I loved hanging out with Marizo and just their personality and infectious and stuff. This Takumi Ito, 2 top 10s in a row.
It's pretty cool.
And he's in the hunt for the Angler of the Year title. He finished 6th on the St. Lawrence, 10th on Champlain. And if you go back and look at his stats, he also has a 2nd in an Open on Toledo Bend, a top 10 on Smith Lake on Spotted Bass, a 10th place on Grand Lake. You're talking power fishing, grass, spotted bass, and smallmouth that this guy has top 10s, and he's only fished 8 events with bass.
Yeah.
He could be someone to really look out for in the future going forward for the rest of the year. And then Brock Mosley, also just an incredible couple of weeks. I don't know if anyone really saw him backing up what he did previously up north, but he reversed it. He went largemouth on the St. Lawrence and smallmouth on Champlain. Who would have thought that?
Yeah.
For top 10 finishes.
Yeah.
So that was really cool in my book. So
yeah,
just a heck of a week a heck of a 2 weeks on ESPN there.
Great New York swing. And hey, man, how about the camera guys over the 2 weeks? We talked a little bit about that, but what those guys went through and really what the entire staff went through and the anglers and their families to get these 2 events in the books. It's just, man, it was a perfect storm. Everything went. It couldn't have went any better, man.
I must have missed that part. Joel saying that Kobe broke out the drift sock.
Oh,
I don't remember seeing that.
If he did,
that'd be ironic. We haven't talked about a drift sock in 10 years, and then we talked about Zona on it. So.
Yeah. So, wow, just an incredible week. All right, I want to let everybody know I mentioned today we're going to have Paul Mueller on, tomorrow Brandon Polinick, and then on Wednesday we're going to have an in-studio guest. John Sukup's going to be in studio. Get your electronics questions keyed up because that is what this show is going to be about. If you have a question on any brand of electronics, it doesn't matter. You're going to be able to ask John, and hopefully he will be able to give you an answer. And if he doesn't have an answer, I can guarantee you he's going to get an answer.
Yeah, he's really good with his electronics.
Yeah.
I don't know if he really had to use his electronics very much on the Mississippi River because he probably knows it that well. Throwing the swim jig. Tom Mansour, definitely want to talk about this. I think dude's 71.
Yeah.
Go back to the last couple years with the Rick Clunn victory, and you're talking about 2 70-year-olds at 2 different professional tours that have won.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
It's pretty cool.
Jacob Wheeler fell less than 2 pounds short, which would have been crazy. Would have been back-to-back wins in super tournaments at 200 plus boats, but a really stingy Mississippi River from what they were used to. It only took cash a check. It only took 19.3.
Yeah,
which was 100
here's
place.
here's the unfortunate thing. The event was scheduled while the Elite Series was taking place.
Yeah, it
that
concluded
is
on the 3rd day.
Dude.
And what Digital P Media and Peyote and Travis Moran and those guys do over there is a great product. Yeah, I did some of the FLW stuff last year. Those guys have it dialed in. But man, I think it got kind of lost in the shuffle, which was what was happening on the Elite Series. Nothing that they did. It's not that they weren't doing their job. They're just up against an animal that was kicking out 20-pound limits at Champlain smallmouth and boat flipping 6-8 largemouths. It was insane. Numbers wise, now that we're 2 in, this was a 150 boat field for the first couple events of the year, and then the last 2 there were, I believe, 54 BPT guys that fished in the last super tournament, 50 that fished in this super tournament. Andy Morgan cashed the last check, a $5,000 check, but they paid $10,000 down to 100th place, which they had been paying $5,000 down to 75th place out of 150. But this tournament, you really saw the BPT guys kind of flex their muscles. Out of the 50, 38 of them cashed a check, which is 76% of the BPT anglers that entered this tournament on the Mississippi River went home with a check. Like I said, Andy Morgan got the last $5,000 check. But I've gone back and forth, and I'm doing the numbers here because a guy who finishes in 95th would have obviously finished higher, finish in the 60s in a regular field, but he only gotten 5,000, but he gets 10,000 here.
Right.
So if you're in that group that would have gotten the 5,000 or the $7,500 check out of the 150 field before the BPT guys came, it's a good deal. Mm-hmm. Like, let me look at this. So like Daryl Gleason, 100th place, right? $10,000 on a same entry fee, whatever, $5,700, whatever they're paying for each entry fee. That's a good deal. He finished at the top half. He got his 10,000. Take out all of the BPT guys. That's a $5,000 check for him. So it worked in his advantage, right? He's going to finish lower. He still gets the same Angler of the Year points because they take the BPT anglers out, and he gets an extra $5,000.
Yeah.
Now, Chris Brashear finishes 102nd, he got $0. Take out the 38 guys that were ahead of him, he would have finished 64th, and he would have gotten $5,000. So the BPT guys took a check out of his pocket. Preston Craig, remember that Preston Craig kid who won the TBF, living the dream package, all the chaos to get him on it. Guy hasn't cashed a check this year. Without the BPT guys, he'd have cashed a check. He goes home empty-handed.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what you want me to say. I mean, it's
the way the best,
the good, the bad, the ugly. I guess. So I don't know.
Based on what I figured it out, and you have to go down, and then you base it on the 75 that would have gotten paid with 150, and then there were 42 in the top 119 or 18, I believe, that were BPT anglers, and then you shuffle it down. There were between 13 and 16 guys. My number's 14, but I don't want to say it's 100% 14. Between 13 and 16 guys that are FLW Tour pros that are fishing the entire year at $5,700 entry fee that went home empty-handed this week that would have gotten a check had there not been BPT anglers there. And then I'm listening to Ike Live last night. They have Ryan Salzman on, and he was talking about his Mississippi River event. And this just kind of drove it home for me is so Salzman finishes 111th. He was one of those guys that would have gotten a check, right? But Ike asked him about his area. Well, he had BPT guys in his area, and he's like, I felt kind of glad because outside of Chad Warren would have made would have been on the verge of the top 10 without the BPT guys. And that dude's on a tournament by tournament basis. I mean, he works his ass off just to get out there every week. He's from Sand Springs, a hell of an angler, almost won the tour event on the Potomac.
Yeah.
They had 3 other BPT guys in their area, and they had to split up fish with them. And they're in this small backwater area. So now you have that affecting Angler of the Year and Cup races.
Okay, so you said 13 to 16. Did you go the other way? What's the other way number?
What do you mean the other way number?
Well, you said that there were between 13 and 16 guys that would have got a check if the BPT guys weren't there. How many guys got checks because the BPT guys were there?
None. There were.
Well, you just told me one.
13 to 16. No. Gleason would have still gotten a check. It would have just been a $5,000 check, not a $10,000 check.
So he was affected by that then.
He was positively. That's what I said. He was positively affected. He got 10,000 instead of 5,000. But there were around 15 FLW anglers who signed up at the beginning of this year who did not get paid at all in this tournament.
No, I understand that.
Who would have gotten paid.
Did you do the number where it actually helped guys that those additional...
Like Daryl?
Yeah.
No, I didn't do that number.
Well, you need to do that number.
Well, I'm just saying, those guys got paid regardless. They just got paid an extra $5,000.
But that had an effect on it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I get the 13 to 16, but at the same time, you got to take a look at it.
How many guys got 10,000 that would have gotten 75 or 5? That's the other way.
Yeah.
And there's a number of those guys in there. Like, I mean, Roger Hughes, Nick Gainey, Tommy Dickerson, Eric Jackson, Alex Davis, Troy Morrow, those guys.
I mean, you got to throw that number out there, too. Dude, it's 6 one way, half a dozen the other. It really is.
I don't know if I'd go that far.
It really is. I mean, the fact of the matter is you're going to have an effect from a negative aspect, and you're going to have an effect from a positive aspect.
Yeah.
As a result of those numbers.
You got any thoughts on Poche?
All I know is, was that the rule? If that's what the rule was, you should have known. I haven't talked to him. I haven't really investigated. I haven't looked into it. There was a minimum horsepower requirement, correct? If it's in the rules, all I'm saying is I don't know. But what I'm saying is if it's in the rules...
Regardless of how stupid that rule is.
Yeah.
Or not stupid.
You know what? You should read the rules and know what the rules are.
I could see it being a safety rule.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's his fault.
Do you agree with that?
No, I 100%.
If it's in the rules...
When you sign up for a tournament, you are agreeing that should you excel, there is a certain compensation that you are guaranteed. And you are also signing that you are going to follow those rules. That is the contract that you sign with the organization.
Yeah.
So,
that's an interesting question. If you end up catching them, none of this math even matters. If you catch them, you're going to get paid. That was a comment by Dave.
We're really not going to get back to the catch 'em stuff because then I will go off the absolute. I will go off the rails.
I just want to know, is that not a fact? If you catch them, it's a moot point. Agree or disagree?
To some extent. I mean, Rich Lewitsky caught him. He got 19 pounds. He finished 104th. He should have gotten paid in the standard.
Okay, let me rephrase the question. If you catch them at a high level, you don't have to worry about it.
I mean, Tyler Stewart caught him. He finished 4th. He had 50 pounds, 7 ounces, and got $22,000 because Jacob Wheeler, David Walker, and Zach Burge finished 2, 3, 4.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not even remotely the question that I'm asking.
No, if you go out and caught 12 pounds a day, you were getting a $10,000 to $14,000 check, and it didn't matter who finished.
That's what Dave said
to you.
Yeah, that's all that comment is directed to. All right, we're gonna take a break and come back with our special guest today, Paul Mueller. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, man, he's having just an outstanding season once again. Great stuff. So we'll take a break, come back, and we are going to talk a little Yellowstone, but later. I haven't tapped out yet, but I'm getting pretty doggone close.
I called you last night. You were not, I don't know, man.
I'm getting pretty close, man. Last night was bad again. All right, we're going to take a break, come back with Paul Mueller here on a Monday, kicking off the week on BTL.
The ultimate fishing system starts with Lowrance HDS Live. The best fish finding tools, from chirp sonar and fish reveal to side scan and down scan imaging, and complete touchscreen control from your trolling motor to your big motor.
We've paired one of the most iconic hulls in the history of bass boats with a proven lineup of trusted accessories. We're bringing you best-in-class value and performance, leaving others in your wake. Turnkey value, turnkey performance. The Pantera 2 is an overachiever in the 19-foot category. Once you hit the throttle, you'll feel the rush, and there's no looking back.
Kevin, what are you doing here?
Oh, I'm just filling in for Billy.
I need a 660 shad crankbaits in the Series 5 model.
We're out.
You're not out. You got all kinds of them right there.
We're out.
Kevin, I need 6.
Have a lollipop.
I do not want a lollipop.
Have a lollipop.
Do you have it in sexy shad color?
All of us on the Pro Tournament Trail use Gamakatsu hooks.
Why?
Because they are absolutely the best.
It's not about how many bites you get.
It's how many you put in the boat.
Gamakatsu makes hooks for every fishing style.
We didn't come this far to lose fish.
Did you?
For more information, visit gamakatsu.com.
The Big Bite Baits Kamikaze Swim On is a very unique bait, and it's got a full body but with ribs to give it a bigger profile but not more plastic. It's got a jointed tail that gives it a lot of action, as well as this up and down crawl type trail with holes and ribs in it, so it creates a bubble trail almost. This bait is supposed to be fished upside down or vertical like this on a great for a chatterbait. I prefer it on a swim jig as well, but you can also cut it down and put it on the back of a finesse jig. You know, flip it around for some spotted bass or flipping docks. Anytime you want a small, compact, little trailer for it, this is great for it. So check out the full lineup of swim-ons at bigbitebaits.com.
At Duckett Fishing, we have assembled the top pros in the country to help us design rods to give you a competitive advantage. Castability, strength, durability, action, sensitivity, weight and balance, and consistency. Combine that with the best warranty in the industry, and you have rods that are pro-driven.
Duck It Fishing, pro-driven.
Blue Water by TH Marine. Offering LED lighting solutions for your boat, trailer, truck, ATV, and so much more. Engineered and built to be rugged with waterproof and submersible options. Designed for easy installation, Blue Water is available in a variety of colors and styles. All backed by a limited lifetime warranty. Blue Water by TH Marine.
All right, we are back, kicking off the week. Hopefully we are ready to go to our special guest. He's tearing it up this year, Matthew.
We better be able to go to him.
Yeah.
If he can't get this technology figured out, I'll be disappointed. He's got every other technology figured out better than anyone else in the fishing world right now, it appears.
All right, well, let's bring him in. Paul, you there, man?
Yeah, man. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks for taking time out. Wow, what a New York swing for you. I know you didn't get the W at the SLR, but you got to be happy with the performance of the last two events.
Yeah, you know, you never really know how you're going to do in these events based off of practice because, you know, I've learned to practice where you don't really lean on fish. And quite honestly, you know, St. Lawrence was interesting because there wasn't big schools of fish, you know, but there was big fish. And so it was definitely a chore to get that type of weight each day. But, man, when you got bit out there, there were some giant fish, man. I'm still kind of like in disbelief of that big 713 smallie that I caught. I'm going to get a replica amount of that fish. I probably never will catch a fish that big again. And, man, that made the whole week for me as far as that event goes. I mean, and catching it in the tournament, I mean, it was just incredible. When it came by the side of the boat, I just was like, I don't know how big this fish is. I mean, the thing was just a freak. You know, we don't have that great of pictures yet. There are some that I'm waiting for that I'm hoping came out a little bit better of the fish. The pictures never do it justice. This fish was an absolute freak of nature.
Well, that's what I said. Someone said, well, how big was the fish? I said, it was so big that it looked small in the pictures. And if you've been up north and you've been on Ontario, I remember the first time I went up on Ontario, and it was after one of the Elite Series, and I went out with Chris Zaldane, and he's like, what's your personal best? And I said, 4 something, and he laughed in my face. And he said, well, that'll be 2 or 3 drops. And I catch a 5.8, and I take a picture, and I'm like, we got to get another picture with that one. I'm like, why? He's like, because it doesn't look 5.8. Like, the smallmouth are the hardest thing to accurately show how big those suckers are because they all like grow out and girthy and 3-dimensionally. I mean, it's not like a 10-pound Florida largemouth.
Yeah, you know, the fish was 22.25 inches. And, you know, a fish back home like that is a 6-pound fish. We have some pretty healthy smallmouth. But that to give you a perspective, not only that fish was a spawned out fish, you know, it wasn't quite full yet. I mean, that fish is a New York State record in the spring. There's no doubt about it. Maybe even in the fall. 1/2 pound of eggs and then that spring weight. I mean, that fish was probably an 8.5 pound fish. Wow. It was only 22.25 inches, which is just, it's mind blowing on a fish that's really not that long, but the thing was so wide. I mean, when I put it in the live well, for one, I put it on it had its own side on the live well. And then when you opened up both live wells, when I was culling, I'd look at the other fish and they looked like 3-pounders compared to it. And it was 4.5 pound to 5 pound fish. And the rest of the event for me, I mean, I couldn't even gauge on what the size of the fish were. After you see a fish that big, when you caught a 5-pounder, I thought it was a 4-pounder. You know, I mean, it's hard to describe a fish like that. I mean, it's just, what an incredible fish. I took really good care of it. I know that fish is out there swimming again. And, you know, maybe somebody will catch it during the right time of year. And that's not the only fish in that system either. That's the thing that's incredible. There's fish like that. There's bigger fish than that. I'm convinced of that. So you're going to see a New York State record caught. It could be any time, probably spring or fall, but they live there. That place is an unreal fishery.
Wow. All right, let's talk a little bit about building up before that you caught that fish. Did you see that on your electronics? Was it, you know, by a boulder? I mean, what was the situation, how you caught that fish?
Okay, so this is no joke. A lot of these places had drum, and just like Champlain, I mean, tons of drum in on these fisheries. And this particular spot, it was kind of had scattered rock piles. Not super sharp drops, but there was, the rock piles would create a drop. So the rock piles would be anywhere from, some of them would top out to 17, but most of them were in that 20 to 25 foot range. This particular area was in the low to mid 20s, and there was a rock cluster. And this fish was by itself. I saw it on the Garmin Live Scope. It was 50 feet away from the boat, and it did not look like a bass. It just looked, I thought it was a drum, but if I see something, I fire a bait to it. You just never know. And I threw that drop shot. I was fishing a Berkeley Max Scent flatworm, and that's not a sponsor of mine, but dude, when you get around the Great Lakes, that bait is magical. I mean, it's incredible. So I fired that bait over there, and then all of a sudden I just seen it nose down. A lot of times when you throw at a drum, I mean, I didn't catch a single drum that whole week. For whatever reason, they just weren't active. Maybe, I don't know, if you drag a tube, a lot of times you catch them, but they don't seem to like a drop shot, or at least I hadn't caught any on it. And so this thing nosed down on it right away. I mean, it ran right to it, and I said, oh boy. Set the hook, and I'm like, I still didn't think it was a bass at first. I was like, I got a drum. And then I could tell by the way it was fighting that it wasn't a drum, because drum, they have like a real strong surge when you hook them. And this thing was just heavy with head shakes. I said, oh my gosh, this is a bass. And then when I saw it, I mean, I'm pretty cool and collected when I'm fighting a bass. I've done it enough. I try not to let it bother you, because you just have to do your job and focus on each fish and how it's hooked and how you got to fight it. This fish, when I saw it, it rattled me. I'm not going to lie to you. I was like, you know what? I don't care about this tournament, whatever. I just have to get my hands on this fish, the biggest smallmouth I've ever seen. And if I lose this fish, and that's what in the back of my mind, I was like, man, if I lose this fish, I'm not going to be able to forgive myself. And I'll rewind it a couple years back when Jason Christie won on St. Clair, and I had a smallmouth follow my bait to the boat that, no joke, was equally as big, maybe a little bit smaller, 7.5 or so. Biggest smallmouth I've ever seen. I didn't have a chance to catch it because it literally hit the bait at the surface, and had it hooked for 30 seconds. And that was replaying in my mind, because it was a 7-pound class fish. I'd never seen a fish like that. And I was like, man, I have to land this fish. Whatever, nothing else matters right now but landing this fish. And it wasn't hooked that good. And it bulldogged me, it fought, and I'm telling you, man, I haven't had a fish rattle me like that in a long time, man. It was very nerve-wracking. But when I got my hands on her, it was awesome. And it just happened to be that Sejo, the camera guy, he was there. So he got pictures of it. I got one of the pictures so far. He says he has more. And hopefully I'm going to get that email in the next day or so. But, man, what an awesome fish.
You're kind of become known as a guy who gets in these 4-day shootouts with like a nemesis. I mean, I go back, I'm thinking of Lanier with Chris Zaldane, and now you had a 4-day shootout with Chris Johnson here. I mean, we interview a lot of guys, and 99% of them are going to say, hey, it's about the fish. I was just worried about catching as much as I could. But, dude, you're dueling it out with Chris Johnson, and you knew that he was going to bring it every single day on that fishery that you were on. And I mean, you got him by an ounce on the first day. You got him by ounces on the second day, and you got him by almost 2 pounds on the third day. But was that in the back of your mind going into that, every morning, like, man, I have to keep my foot on the gas pedal because I know the guy behind me is one of the best that's ever fished in this lake?
Oh, no question. Whenever you go up to the St. Lawrence, any of those, it's not even just the St. Lawrence, even though that's their that's their backyard. But any of the good smallmouth fisheries, both those brothers are going to be players. I mean, they're fantastic fishermen. I mean, the world is seeing that the last couple of years, and especially that place, Lake Ontario, that's their backyard, man. I mean, there's no doubt that either one of those guys are going to be a player at any given moment, any time. And I mean, look, he almost won that tournament when Micah won. So, yeah, I mean, that those guys are going to bring it. And, for me, it honestly doesn't bother me. I mean, you can't let, because it's not just those guys. You have a lot of other guys that are really good as well. And you can't think about what your competition is doing, because that's just something you can't control. What you can control is going out there and trying to do your best and executing. And, that's enough of a task in its own, but for sure, you knew those guys were going to bring it. And he did a fantastic job. You know, quite honestly, that was the roughest water that I've been in a tournament on the final day. And I tell you what, man, I mean, it was just me, him, and Clark that went out there. And I give Clark a tremendous amount of respect that he went out there as well. And he's an OG, man. I mean, that dude is he don't care. He said, I'm going. I don't care how much it blows. I'm going. I said, man, I just hope I can get out there and catch something once I get out there. But it was an interesting day. And, you know, I think the one mistake I made is I left too early. I would have liked to have that over again. And you know, I probably could have fished for another hour. Doesn't mean that would have amounted to anything, but if I could have it all over again, I would have stayed out there a little bit longer. I didn't know how rough it was going to be at the mouth. It was rough in the morning, and I was thinking, man, if it's rough over here, the mouth is going to be awful. And it really wasn't that bad. So I knew I made a bad decision when I was about halfway back. I said, man, I left too early. And it's just deep down inside, you're like, man, this could bite me. So
wow.
It is what it is, man. I mean, hey, you know what? My hat's off to him. Chris, he earned it. There is no doubt it was not given to him. He absolutely earned it. And hey, man, I mean, you're going to get beat by somebody like that. Hey, my hat's off to him. That was a fantastic finish. And you know what? It was redemption for him. You know, he was in the lead, I think, going into the final day, and then Micah beat him with a fantastic bag. And you know what? Sometimes you got to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. You know, he wants to win that tournament. I know how bad I wanted to win my first elite tournament. And gosh, man, if I would have lost on Lanier, it would have crushed me. So, you know, sometimes you just have to look and see that, you know, this guy wanted it more than anything. And I'm happy for him.
All right, I got to ask you, man, is there a technique, or what technique is there to land smallmouth in 6-footers?
Man, it was fun. You know, the one thing I can say is I had a really good day with EK, my camera guy. I spent a few days with him since day 2, and we just had a ball, man. I mean, he's a trooper. When we came back in, I was just trying to, you know, dodge those waves, and it was like literally he was sitting in the wrong side of the boat. It looked like somebody was just taking a 5-gallon bucket and just pushing it into his head. He just had his back turned to me, and we were laughing. We had a good time, man. And it was, it's tough to land fish when the waves are like that. You just have to kind of tire them out and try to get in between. I mean, that first one of the day, I got so pumped up because I was like, wow, I can actually catch a fish out here. I got my hand on that fish, and the wave bumped us, and the fish came out of my hand, and I broke the rod, and I was still fired up. But it was quite the experience that final day, that's for sure.
You see, we watched on live on ESPN2 how much goes into a tournament like that, leading the 3 days, and then you have to turn right back around and go to Champlain, which, I mean, Champlain isn't an easy fishery to figure out with as many decisions as you have as far as location, running, species, wind, weather, all sorts of stuff going on there. And then you backed it up with a top 15, 19 on the first day, 19 on the third day. I mean, were you mentally, physically exhausted after that, or was it another one that you were like, man, I had one in my wheelhouse here, I almost won it. This is another one that's right in my wheelhouse, and I have to just completely put that second place finish in the past because I have just as good a chance to win this one on Champlain?
Well, there's no question that, you know, as a competitor, when you come close to winning and you don't know how many opportunities you're going to have, it stings a little bit, especially when you know that you could have fished a little bit longer. So yeah, you make decisions, you live with them, but it's in the back of your mind, but you have to kind of erase that going into another event. Both of these fisheries, I really don't have a lot of experience on, even though that, you know, they're only about 5 hours from where I live. I've been on Lake Ontario twice. I fished an Everstart there one time where we went out of Clayton, and that was the extent of what I knew. So I learned that pretty much in practice there. And Champlain, I don't really have a lot of experience. I fished a divisional there one time, an Everstart, and the Elite when Aaron Martins won. So I had to get familiar with that place. And Champlain is a different beast because you really need to fish for brown fish and green fish. But, you know, I decided to stick with my strength and go for the smallmouth. And quite honestly, I'm happy on what I found, what I discovered. I'm not happy on my day 2 execution. I should have had another 19 or so. The biggest fish I had the whole practice or tournament I lost it on day one. That happens though. I mean, I'm using really finesse stuff, and the fish wasn't hooked that good, I guess. I lost it right at the boat. It was a 5-pound fish, which is a really big smallmouth for Champlain. And that's what kept me out of fishing yesterday. That being said, it would have been very, very hard to beat Palaniuk. He had a fantastic day. 21 is about, man, I don't know if you're going to do too much more than what he did on smallmouth there. I guess if you throw a 5 in that mix, but he had a really, really good, I mean, they were all consistent size fish. So it'd have been hard to beat him, but I mean, hey, you know what? You never know. I would have loved to fish yesterday and just seen what I could do. But 19 is good there. If you could do 19 a day, and I should have been able to do it. That's a pretty good bag of smallies consistently to do it day in and day out, because they change, man. The weather changes, the wind changes, and they change. They were hard to get to bite some days and easier to get to bite other days. I think yesterday was probably the best day as far as conditions go to get those fish to bite. And I had fish that I could see and I couldn't catch them on some of those really calm, clear days. And I would have loved to see what was down there that I couldn't get to bite the first couple days on day 4, for sure.
Did you practice at all? Might be a dumb question, but I'm really curious as to why Ticonderoga didn't play out. Did you practice down there, and why do you think it was so bad in Ty this time?
I didn't, and I'll tell you what. When Aaron Martins won, I spent a lot of time down in Ty pre-fishing, and because I didn't really, like I said, I don't know Champlain that well, so I spent a lot of time. I got to know Ty that well, but the grass really wasn't good the year that Martins won. And I had a decent finish. I could have had a really good finish, a top 20 finish. I lost fish down there too. I think I finished in 34th or whatever that event. But I was like one of a few guys that actually make a check down there. So it wasn't happening. I guess that left a bad taste in my mouth. And I just decided not to go down there. There's a lot of you don't fish for the full day. You've got to deal with the what ifs on the wind and stuff. That place gets really rough. I mean, you certainly wouldn't want to make that run yesterday. I mean, gosh, man.
Oh yeah,
that would have been bad. I mean, that lake is, if it's blowing out of the north or the south, it builds and builds and builds, and it's like a great lake, man. That lake gets really, really scary, and it's rough on your equipment. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of variables that kind of, I was like, you know what, I'm not going to do it. I felt like, this time of year you could do really well with smallmouth, and obviously guys did. The one thing I think that I overlooked was that shallow bite. I like to fish deep. I like to use my electronics, and I kind of got in that comfort zone, but I'm kind of kicking myself because when I first started to learn Champlain, the area where a lot of guys fish shallow and stuff, jerkbait, top water, stuff like that, I like that area, and I just never went there because I had a BASS open that I did that whole deal that those guys were doing, and I got burned doing it. And so it left a bad taste in my mouth, but I'm kicking myself that I didn't try that because a lot of good fish were caught in that part of the lake. And you know what? I kind of knew that was the case, as the tournament was unfolding, because I wasn't seeing anybody, where I was fishing. And I said, you know what? I'm not about to start going over there, knowing what I know and probably getting in somebody's way. I just don't roll like that, man. If I don't find them in practice, I'm not going to go. And especially if I know guys are doing it. And I think it would have been a waste of time if you go over there and you see guys are fishing and it's like some of the stuff that you want to fish. So it's, you got to have proper etiquette when you do. I like to do my own thing, man. I don't like to fish next to guys. I just like to do my own thing and not get in anybody's way. And I don't want anybody getting in my way either. So that's just how I roll, man. I'm old school when it comes to stuff like that.
All right, I have one more question, Matt, and then I'll throw it over to you, and then we'll take a break. And if you have a question for Paul after the break, when we come back, we'll get your question on the instant feedback or on the YouTube comments to Paul. My question, Paul, I'm curious from an education, from a learning standpoint, are you one of the guys that will go back and watch the show and look at some of the video footage from both the SLR event and the Lake Champlain event to where you might pick up something that could clue you in the next time that you go to those bodies of water? Would you do that?
I haven't in the past, but I really should, just because it's a lot. But here's the thing, though. Whenever we go to a fishery again, it's always different. So, yeah, I mean, you can definitely benefit from watching it. But the chances are if we go back to, say we we go back to Clayton again and we get to fish the lake, it's going to be totally different. And so, yeah, you can definitely learn stuff, you know. I mean, and that's what it is. This whole thing for me has been a learning curve, fishing the Elite Series, and I've just been fortunate to survive this expensive learning curve. But yeah, I mean, there's stuff to learn. I mean, these guys, they catch them, man. I mean, look what Brock did with largemouth, you know, on St. Lawrence. I mean, if it was a largemouth tournament, he would have beat everybody. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to learn. These guys are really good, man. And you know, it's funny, this group of guys, the last 2 years, it hasn't been any easier, man. I mean, I fished against different guys the first, you know, 4 years of my career, and these guys are hungry, man, and they're good. And look at the weights. I mean, just look at Champlain weights. Look at when Martin's won, and it was fishing good both times. And just, I mean, this just tells you how good these group of guys are.
Like Mark said, I think we're going to take a break after I have one last question. You got a number of different guys, Rich and stuff, want to know the differences in your drop shot setups between Ontario and Champlain. But I want to kind of wrap up this segment. I would really like to hear just an abbreviated history of your, I guess, evolution with electronics. I mean, you start fishing, you fish tournaments. We all know you fish the Bass Nation and regionally. You said the Ever starts at stuff, but have you always been a guy who relied offshore? Did you have a mentor who was like, hey man, this is how you work the graphs? Or is that something that you kind of developed and then figured out on your own to be kind of known as an electronics guru now? Just kind of walk it through from when you started tournament fishing to now and how you got so good.
I have always been infatuated with electronics since I was a kid, since I started fishing club tournaments. Obviously, the electronics have gone to a level where I never thought that we would reach with live sonar, with that Garmin live scope. I mean, it's just the definition, and you can tell how big the fish are just about if you're looking at a 3-pounder or something or larger than that, if it's a bass or if it's a drum or if it's a perch. I mean, it's just, it's incredible. But I've always loved to fish electronics. You know, I think given where I live in Connecticut, growing up fishing Candlewood Lake, you have to use your electronics for a good portion of the year. And so I started off with 2D sonar, but I also started off, like, you know, when you ice fish, you use electronics a lot. And so I used flashers my whole life. And there's a lot of things that you could do with even traditional sonar and flashers that you can tweak those things. So then fast forward to 2015 on my rookie year on the Elite Series, I entered into the Garmin Panoptics. And that was the Gen 1 Panoptics. And then there was Gen 2. And then there was Gen 3. And then the Gen 4 with the live scope. And the definition with that live sonar has only got better and better. And now they have that new mount, that perspective view. So you can use it kind of like a forward, wider beam in shallow water. In addition to the narrower, more defined beam in the live view forward or the live view down that you use in deeper water. And it's just changed the way that I fished. And anytime that I can use my electronics, I feel like I'm going to perform at my best. I love to fish electronics, man. And there's just so much to learn. The one thing I can say about the Garmin stuff is it's just very easy to use. Guys get intimidated by new technology, but that stuff is really easy to use. I just wish that we had it and not everybody else.
One more question, Mark. I know I lied. I said, is it? But I've asked guys about this, and I think I'm finally going to get someone to agree with me because I see pictures of yellow perch and big bluegill and crappie and those things that look like white bass without the bars on them that you guys catch in the Northeast. What are those called? White perch?
White perch, yeah.
Okay. Do you believe that there is no better training tool, whether you are using a 2D, a downscape, whatever it is, than learning how to catch panfish on your electronics? And does that transition and make bass fishing with your electronics a lot easier? I've been on this train. I've had guys say, no, you're just wasting your time pan fishing. But I feel like it's massive. If you can get good at catching a crappie or a panfish on it, you can catch a bass on it.
So you got to understand, I don't care what kind of fish it is. If it's big, I want to catch it. And if I can look at it on my electronics, I want to catch it even more. So, but the thing is, there's no doubt about it. For me, catching suspended bass, my practice and just dialing in, where 50 feet is to the left this way or whatever, I can put a bait right on a fish's nose. And it's because I practice fishing for crappie, fishing for panfish. I do it all the time. I actually look for that when, say you have a post-spawn bite and the bass are shallow, but the perch may be deep. If the bass fishing's tough, I'll slide out and fish for perch for a couple hours just to stay sharp with my electronics. I've gotten so accurate with that live scope to where if I see a fish cruising around, and this kind of actually hurt me on day 2 on Lake Ontario, where I was throwing that drop shot right on them, and they didn't like that. And so I realized that I couldn't do that I have to kind of, and I saw that on St. Clair too last year in the Angler of the Year Championship. I could see the fish and I could put it on their nose. And sometimes on St. Clair, they would chase the weight down. And it was so aggravating because they chased the weight down and they wouldn't bite. And I'm like, all right, I got to stop doing that. I'm not. And then they would kind of know something was up. So these fish are not that easy to catch all the time. But there's no doubt about it that the more that you can use your electronics, and you're not always going to get into those situations with bass, but there's always something out there that, panfish, lake trout, I mean, you name it, man, that you can use your electronics and get better with it. And I'm always looking to do that because I feel like it makes me better with my electronics for sure.
All right, very cool. We're going to take a break, come back. If you have a question for Paul, put it on the instant feedback or on the YouTube comments. We will be back after these messages. Everybody stay tuned.
Let's face it, fishing electronics are no longer an afterthought. They've become a necessity. And at the Bass Tank, our experts match you with the right electronics, provide professional installation, and educate you to help maximize your catching results while providing support along the way. Because let's be honest, it's about catching, not just fishing. And when you're ready for better results, join the Bass Tank team. Visit us today on Facebook or go to thebasstank.com.
Hey everybody, Tide Faircloth here. Want to show you one of my favorite braided lines, SX1 30-pound Sunline braid. I use this braided line for a couple of different applications, and one of my favorites to use for this line is a swim jig. Casts great, and it's small diameter, and just works really great on a swim jig. Another technique I like to use for 30-pound SX1 Sunline braid is whenever I'm flipping like a light, say an 1/8 to a 1/4 ounce weight in grass, small diameter, I don't lose much action on my worm, just works great in those scenarios. So if you're looking for a braided line for a swim jig or fishing a light Texas rig, check out Sunline's SX1 30-pound braid.
Professional angler, you've got so many things on your mind. Any advantage that we have is key. And not only rods and reels and lines and baits, but in our clothes. And the guys at AFCO, I mean, they have something for every situation. There's nothing AFCO hasn't thought about with the fishermen in mind. It's designed for fishermen, by fishermen, for every scenario you can come to. Any fish, any water, any condition, AFCO has you covered.
Yeah, you care about gear ratios, inches per turn, and ball bearings, but most importantly, you want reliability and dependability in the equipment you use. Lew's doesn't cut corners when it comes to the gear they build. The new Speed Spool LFS is the best $99 reel in the market. Go see for yourself.
The name SPRO says it all. SPRO stands for Sports Professionals. When you look at the pro staff that SPRO has brought on board over the past 15 years, it's been pretty incredible. I mean, one got it just then. From the development of the rock crawler to the McStick, from the Fat Papa to the Little John series, when you tie a SPRO bait on, you know it's been designed by a professional to get the job done.
All right, we are back, kicking off the week with our special guest, Mr. Paul Mueller. And we're going to get to some of the questions on the instant feedback and the YouTube page. Paul, first question. Let's see here. Jim in Indiana wants to know, how deep did you try on Lake Ontario? Chris mentioned that it was 55 feet. What was your deepest?
Deepest I caught a fish was around 40. I didn't find anything in that 50, but I also, there's different, I think they set up differently different parts of that lake. So you could catch them as shallow as 3-4 foot of water. I mean, there was some big ones shallow. But I pretty much focused on that 17 to 35. So I didn't get anything out in that 50, 55.
All right, Dave has a smallmouth question. In the fall, like mid to late October, the water starts to drop. The water temp starts to drop, but it isn't cold yet. He wants to know what baits seem to be the most effective this time of the year, and how deep do you look for smallmouth?
That's a good question. It depends on the lake, though. Every lake is different. It's a hard question to answer because it really depends on your lake. We have different lakes around here. I'll give you one example on my home lake in Candlewood Lake in Connecticut. Those fish will be deep pretty much now because the thermocline has set up. And depending on when your weather changes is kind of what the fish do. So, if it's pre-turnover, the fish are going to be at their deepest, because what happens is the thermocline gets deeper and deeper as the summer goes on, because that cool water is kind of pushing down on it. And then what ends up happening is once that water gets real cold, that colder water is dense and it really pushes down on the thermocline eventually and ruptures it. And that's what your turnover is. So if it's early October back by me, they're deep, and the best thing to use a lot of times is a finesse swim bait. But if it's a deal where it starts to turn over, a lot of times the fish will move shallow. They'll seek stable water. And then there's a lot of different power fishing options that you could use, spinner baits, crank baits. Sometimes if they're just not quite shallow, a blade bait is really good that time of year. So when I think of October, a lot of times a blade bait is a big player for me, like a Silver Buddy style bait. My favorite is a Do It Molds, the vibrating lure that they have. I make my own. 5/8 ounce is probably my favorite. I color the head in a glow chartreuse, and it's a gold blank, and I'll fish that on a casting outfit. And it's a reaction bite. It's a deep or shallow mid-range reaction bite. You let it hit the bottom, pump it, let it fall, pump it, let it fall, and man, it's a smallmouth killer in October.
One of the things I've talked about this and with a number of other guys on the Elite Series is, man, Paul, you don't use I don't know how to say, you use a lot of ugly stuff that's very effective. You know what I'm saying? Like hand poured stuff, just like the straight lead, the blade baits. It's not like it's like a Megabass 110 where you look at it and you're like, that's 19 different colors in the sunlight. It's like simple and effective stuff with good hookup ratios where if you get it in front of it, you're incredibly good at pouring and making your own baits that are designed to catch fish, right?
All right, so this right here, that is a custom swim bait head that I've made from a Do It Mold. They're gonna make this into production, but I've doctored it, and so that's a custom swim bait and a swim bait head from Do It Mold. That's a smallmouth killer right there. That's their little ripper swim bait, and that's a modified I modified the hook. I keep the bend so it fits in. This is actually a poison tail mold that they use for like swim jigs or whatever it is, but I actually use it for a swim bait. And what that does with that head is it rolls that swim bait, because of that line tie is like a 28-degree line tie. So when it's coming through the water, it does this. In addition to the tail kick, this is very similar looking to like a Kitech swing impact. The difference is with this bait is that the tail is really thin and it tapers out to the paddle tail. So it gives it more of a hard wag, and the thing rolls, man. I mean, it is. And you can use whatever hook you want, which my favorite hook is that Style 111 Gamakatsu, and I modify it just to fit that mold, man. And that is the best swim bait head that you can possibly make on planet Earth.
But here's what I'm talking about. There's no eyes in that swim bait head. You don't have it painted IU on the top half with a cream belly with a pearl clear gloss over it. I mean, it's just the chunk of lead in the bait.
Okay, so a lot of times, here's the biggest thing. A lot of times with something like that, it doesn't matter. Now, I will say this. The only time where something painted matters, in my opinion, is there's some times where you're fishing dark conditions, deep water, stuff like that. Well, I will actually glow paint. So it's a glow-in-the-dark paint, whether it's white, chartreuse, etc. I wish I had one to show you, but it's ugly looking. It's a bright kind of color. But the thing is with glow, and this is a trick that I've learned ice fishing, with glow, it doesn't look anything like it looks to the human eye. Once it gets down there in that dark water, all you're seeing is that glow. And what that glow is it's creating an illusion. So anything that you're doing when we're bass fishing, whether you're fishing a clear topwater on a clear day where that light's passing through that topwater and they just can't get a good look at it, that's why those clear translucent colors work good in those situations. It's because it's creating an illusion. They can't eye it up. So the same thing works deep water with glow paint. So that's the only time I'll glow paint something. Other than that, something straight, bare bones like this, it's a neutral color. It doesn't really matter. A lot of times I will say this, though, the color of the swim bait does matter. And especially in clear water. It's pretty crazy. I'll give you something on Lake Champlain. A bait that I was catching them on is, and look at this thing. It's the tiny little, called a crappie fluke from Do It, on a freestyle head. This bait was killer for me on suspended fish when they were tougher to get to bite. Little hook. It's kind of a nightmare sometimes because you don't get a hook in them where you want. But that's where I lost my big one on a little hook like this. But the deal is, you'll see this color. This was my best producing color. It's a translucent. It's got, copper flake in it, a little bit of purple flake in it. And there's a tackle shop in Newtown, Connecticut that pours all these little different custom colors for me. And I said, hey, make me this color for Champlain. And the only thing I did different with it, I took a little spike it, put a little orange on the tail to make it stand out. And this was, and I tried other colors. I tried alewife colors, smelt looking colors. That color on Champlain was mine. So color map.
I won't say who it is, but there's a guy out there who fishes a lot who spent 3 or 4 days in the boat with you. And I was talking to him recently. I said, how you think different terms are going to sit up? And he said, let me tell you, dude. He goes, after seeing what Paul Mueller does on suspended fish with that little jig head and that little bubble shaker and that, he goes, it's honestly scary. It's scary how effective he is at catching fish that no one else can fish. And he goes, I spent 3 or 4 days with him. He said, I spent the last 6 to 8 months trying to do what I saw him do and he made easy. And he said, it's insane what you're able to do with a crappie jig to catch giant suspended smallmouth. He was very impressed.
The thing is, you got to understand, my largest body of water that I guide on, or our largest body of water in the state of Connecticut is 5,400 acres, Candlewood Lake. And that's not a big lake at all. And it's loaded with big fish. And they get pressured. These guys are out there. There's guys out there right now fishing for them. It gets a lot of fishing pressure. And so you have to develop new ways to catch fish. And I've found myself entering that realm of small baits, panfish style baits, just to generate bites. Yeah, it's Russian roulette because you're dealing with a little hook and a big fish. And that bait that I showed you there, that's not even that small of a hook. I'll use stuff with a size 6 hook when the water's cold.
God.
And that is really, really dangerous. I mean, you'll lose fish, but you got to get bit too. So there's a trade-off. But I spent a lot of time with my electronics, and I spent a lot of time pan fishing, as we discussed earlier. And that has definitely helped me with catching those fish. But you got to understand too, the more that you use your electronics for bass, you can tell, and that's the cool thing about that live scope, you can tell the mood of each fish. Every fish has a different mood, and I can tell by his mood on what I'm going to be able to get those fish to get them to bite. Now, Champlain was a different beast. Those fish were different, man. I mean, they were different each day. So that was kind of a little bit of a learning curve for me. And man, like I said, I wish I had day 2 back, because I would have been able to, back it up with I feel like another 19 or more on day 4. I was doing what I like to do. It's just, man, you just don't get a lot of bites doing that sometimes. And it's not like I got on big schools of fish. They were kind of scattered, but I was able to catch fish on my electronics that, that some of those suspended fish, especially, that are very, very hard to catch, other than, having those electronics and having the baits to trigger the bite for sure.
All right, a YouTube question, and he wants to know, what was the color of the flatworm that you were using, and was there a difference between the drop shot setup that you had at the SLR compared to Champlain?
Okay, so I got the flatworms here because I knew that question was going to be asked. That was a top producer for me, both. Even on Champlain, I caught some key fish on it. I didn't catch as many fish on Champlain with the flatworm as I did on St. Lawrence or Lake Ontario. I caught everything on the flatworm on Lake Ontario. Natural shad was by far my favorite color. That's that. It's kind of an ugly looking smoke silver flake, but dude, it works really good on St. Clair. I did real well with that last year. I caught some on the Goby color on Lake Ontario too, but this Goby color on Champlain seemed to be better. I think it's just because it's green. It kind of looks like a perch. They're eating a lot of perch on Champlain. The setup though did not change at all. When I go to big water for smallmouth, this rod is the bomb. It's a 722 ecstasy. It's a $550 rod, so it's definitely not cheap. But as far as a feel deal, when you're talking about the ultimate feel, I mean, and the thing, so it's a 722, Dobbins Ecstasy 722, 7 foot 2 inch, 2 power. Typically a 2 power is, it's a little bit softer in the tip, but this particular blank that they have in these Ecstasy rods, they have more power per number. So 1 power is going to be like a 1.5, a 2 power. I feel like this is like a 2.5. It's not quite a 3, which would be a medium. A 2 would be a medium light. This is kind of in between the medium light and the medium, if that makes any sense at all. It's got a lot of power, a lot of backbone, which you need that to leverage those fish. You still need the tip to work the bait. But whenever I'm dealing with, Great Lakes, big water fish, which Champlain is in that category, I love this rod. St. Clair, same thing. When I fished the Angler of the Year Championship, use the same rod. Lou's Custom Pro Speed Spin 2000, Gamma 10-pound torque braid. 6-pound or 8-pound Gamma Edge fluorocarbon leader, depending on how much zebra mussels are in the area. I upped it to 8 on Lake Ontario just because those fish were mean and you were fishing around a lot of rock cluster. But man, this is my setup, and I don't waver off of it when I'm around big water fish for sure. I mean, it's the ultimate drop shot setup for me.
I have noticed, up north and the spinning rod guys. I mean, there's guys who have won Bassmaster Classics on $150 combos, bait casting wise. But you get in that spinning world, spinning reel and rod realm, and guys treat that like their baseball glove or their hockey stick. There just seems to be a feel, and the guys who do it, like you guys have like the exact same setup every time. And it's just interesting how, you can have 8 or 9 different bait casting combos that feel the same, but man, everyone has that little niche of the spinning rod when it gets in their hand and it's like their golf putter or something like that. They can just do different stuff with theirs. And then you'll see them get in other guys' boats, and it's funny because they're always like, oh man, how do you drop shot with this? I can't feel anything. This is tough. It's so unique. It's so specialized on the spinning rod when it gets to that level.
The thing is, when you're talking about spinning, when you're talking about light line, when you're talking about lightweight baits like this little freestyle jig from Do It with that crappie fluke, I fish that on a 721 Ecstasy. And the thing is, you don't have to spend $550 on every rod that you use for fishing. I mean, I don't use the Ecstasies for everything, but when it comes to a field bite, when I want the ultimate sensitivity and a lot of times just the right action in the rod to work the bait, but also the right power in the rod, that Ecstasy rod is very, very hard to beat. And yeah, it makes a big difference. There's no doubt. Sometimes when they just kind of breathe on it, and a lot of times like those suspended fish are probably the hardest fish in the world to catch. They are not, a lot of times they're not aggressive. If they're on the bottom, they're way more aggressive. And I prefer that they're on the bottom when I'm fishing for smallmouth, but that's just not always the case with the conditions. So when you're dealing with a suspended fish and they come up to that little bait a lot of times, and you need that little bait to trigger that fish. If I were to use something an inch, 2 inches longer than that bait that I showed you, they'll come up to it and look at it, but they won't eat it. And so when they do eat it, they just barely grab it. It's just really, really soft because they don't have another fish by them. They don't have to compete over it. They're just going to come up and suck it in. And that's where the sensitive rod makes a really, really big difference because it's a lot of it is timing in the hook set. You have to set the hook at the proper time.
Hey, Paul, several people want to know, what was the hook that you were using on that drop shot rig?
Okay, so the hook, I got it right here. I'm going to show it to you. It's a Gamakatsu. I go with a bigger hook. Some guys like a smaller hook. I like a 1/0 hook, especially Lake Ontario. 1/0 split shot, drop shot from Gamakatsu. That Aaron Martin's hook is a really good hook. And I'm not a Gamakatsu pro, so I can say whatever I want. My only beef with the Aaron Martin's hook is the barb is too small. Okay, it's a great hook because they opened up the gap. It's a really, I love the material of that Aaron Martin hook and that coating that they have. But here's the hook. This is a split shot drop shot. The difference with this hook, I feel like it's a little bit stronger and the barb's a little bit bigger. And the deal, what I do with it is kind of what Aaron Martin's used to do before his hook came out. Is you take a pair of pliers and you go right behind the barb, make sure you don't mess up that barb, and you open it up, you flex it out. And basically what that does is you give yourself more gap from that hook point to the line tie. And that is the proper, in my opinion, that is the best hook as far as when you're dealing with smallmouth, just getting it to, no matter where that fish grabs it with its mouth, it's gonna go home somewhere. And especially on those Great Lakes fish, man, they got such a weird, small, curved mouth. Unlike any of the smallmouth that we have back home, to me, as of right now, that's the best hook that you can use for drop shot.
Why does no one drop shot with a little treble hook?
I don't know. I don't have enough. A treble hook I just think is a disaster. Treble hook and smallmouth is.
I'm just curious. You get a little size 6 treble hook. You put your flatworm on one of the barbs, and now you're.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it. I think that the thing is, and the reason I think that this split shot drop shot hook is good is kind of got a longer. It's not like a rounded hook, like a mosquito hook or an octopus hook. It's got a longer. It's a longer distance from the line tie. It's kind of like this. It's very similar to this swim bait jig head that I use. It's got kind of like an O'Shaughnessy style bend to it. That O'Shaughnessy style bend, it catches more places. When they bite it weird, if they got it in a weird part of their mouth, it catches in more places, and that's why I think it's kind of, I never really thought of it that way, but it is. It's like an O'Shaughnessy style hook, and that's why I think it works better than just a lot of different other styles of drop shot hooks. There are some that I want to play with, but you don't start playing with something in the middle of a tournament.
When you're catching 27 pounds and 8-pound smallmouth, let's just change up the hook.
But we're always looking for stuff. I will say this. I'm not narrow-minded in anything. I've tried a lot of different hooks. That's one thing I do in my off-season. I pour different jig heads. I try different hooks. I have access to every brand of hook that there is. And I'm not biased towards any brand. I mean, there's a lot of good hook companies out there. And each company has its own specialty as far as hook goes for a jig head or for different styles of fishing. And I'm always looking for the best hook. So, yeah, I mean, the search still continues. But right now, that split shot drop shot hook, in my opinion, is the best deal. And I'm a big fan of a larger barb. I think some of these companies have made the barb smaller on hooks. And it's like, why? Why would you do that? I want it to go into meat or bone. I want it to stay there. Not in my hand, but, when it's in a fish, I want it to go home and stay home. I don't have a problem penetrating that hook. I want it to just, once it's penetrated, I want it to stay there because that makes a huge difference. Sometimes you don't have them hooked really good, and the only thing you have is a little bit of that barb, and that barb is the difference of whether or not that the hook's going to come out or not, because maybe that hook is not coming in all the way. It's just to the barb. So the barb is a big, big component on a hook for me, and the bigger the barb, the better.
Very cool stuff. All right, man. Anything else, Matthew?
Yeah. How important is... I guess this could go wherever you want. How important is the Bass Nation to you? And would you like to see Bass highlight the Bass Nation more on the Elite Series? Just haven't seen. I mean, I fished the Bass Nation. You've achieved the ultimate goal of what everyone is. You're out there with Caleb Summerall. We saw what Brandon Polinick did this week at Win. I mean, you got 3 guys out there. Where do you think that falls as far as the Bass Nation, what it meant to you, and how you would like to see it progress moving forward in the next 3 to 5 years?
Without the Bass Nation, I'm not where I'm at. So there wasn't any high school or college fishing, that was my way to the Classic. That was my way to the Elites, winning the national championship on the Ouachita River in 2014, that gave me my invite to the Elite. So, I mean, that's where it all started for me. So it holds a special place in my heart, and I think that that's something that we need to continue to really, there's a lot of guys out there like me that have that dream of making it to the Elite Series, and honestly, I think it's It's a more sustainable way than, say, the Opens. The Opens are, they're definitely a way to get there, but there's more traveling. There's a, it's hard either way. But I think the main thing, that grassroots deal, man, I mean, it is so important that, we just continue on with that. And, personally, I'm going to give you my honest opinion. I liked it, the format of when they kind of changed the format. I liked it when it was, if you were the top in each division, you went to the Classic. 5 guys, not just top 3 in the tournament. That's very hard to do. So my first Classic, I finished in 8th. I was a top guy in the Eastern Division. I finished 8th at Dardanelle. In that top 3 format, I would have never made that Lake Gunnersville tournament, the first one that I fished in 2014. So I feel like it should go back to that, personally. That's just my personal opinion. It gives people more opportunities. If you're the best guy in your division, you should have a shot to fish the Bassmaster Classic. It's a tough road to get just to that national championship, and man, there's a lot of opportunities there. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Bass Nation, man. I'm a Bass Nation guy to the core. That'll never change, and it's just it's really awesome. If we look back on it, just my dreams of making it to this far as I did, and Bass Nation was my stepping stone, man. I mean, without that, gosh, I don't know where I'd be.
Here's what I want to see. I want to see after a tournament, I want to see Cody Holland and you and Sumrall and Polinick and all the guys who have won the frickin' Bass Nation. You stay after a day. Bass has their camera crew. They put together something that runs during all these commercial breaks on Bass Live, which now they're running it live on it, so you're not missing anything. That's a great. You can watch the live stuff while the commercials run. Put a frickin' 1-minute spot in there about joining the Bass Nation, so these people who are watching Paul Mueller catch 713s and 27 pounds know that in 2013 he was a guide who was fishing the Bass Nation, who had a dream of making it, and it's a couple $100 entry fees, a state team, a regional, and a national championship away from being in that shoes, and grow that grassroots program and take the examples of these anglers like you, like Caleb, like Brandon, like Cody, and say, listen, this is a viable option if you really want to grow the sport, if you want to own a business, to have a family, to go to your daughter's softball games or your son's basketball games and still have a chance to fish in the Classic and make the Elite Series. Take you guys and use you as an example of what can actually happen through the Bass Nation, because I feel like there's a lot of people who don't know how you guys got where you are and then don't know how to take the first step for their path to follow in your footsteps. That's my soapbox. I'm off of it now. Sorry.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of guys that are good enough to do this, and obviously there's a lot of risks that are involved when you're going to fish for a living, especially at this level. Being that we're still paying entry fees and stuff like that. But there's definitely a great platform in the Bass Nation to where you can definitely still have a job, you can still work, and still see how you can do against some of the best around the country. It's really cool, man. The one thing that I think that is so cool is that there's guys that I've met throughout the years in the Bass Nation, different states, especially in the Northeast, and I stay in contact with some of those guys, and it's just it's humbling when I guess I'm an inspiration to some of those guys, and to me, I don't look at it that way, but that's it's you get a lot of really good support and warm wishes in these tournaments as guys following along, and it's really awesome, man, because it was a dream, and there's guys out there that have that same dream, and it's just a great opportunity for them to chase that dream and still have a job, and you don't have to kind of gamble everything away. Everything worked for me because I was, like you said, I was guiding, so I was making money guiding, and I was just seeing how that I knew that was my break. I mean, that was, if I could do it there, I could make the elites, and I could see how that went. But I knew that that was my way. Being that there wasn't high school fishing, college fishing, I think that's a great thing too, is to have that. But we can't forget about the grassroots guys, the guys that are too old to be in college and stuff like that. There's still guys that are past that point that still have that dream that they want to fish the Elite Series. So hey, man, let's give those guys an opportunity to do it. If they want to do it, man, they got that dream, they should go after it.
All right, very cool. Paul, man, great show, great stuff for the fans, and can't thank you enough for taking time out after just pretty impressive New York swing there, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys, man. It's always fun to talk fishing, and I'm always glad when I'm on this show.
All right, man. Best of luck to you. Fall fishing abounds, and then St. Clair coming up. Canada's off limits, right?
Yeah, as of right now.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting, but that fishery is a fantastic fishery. You're still going to see a lot of big fish caught. I kind of wish that we could fish in Canada. Maybe it'll change, I think because if you could do that, it kind of spreads out everybody out a little bit more. But nonetheless, that place has got giant smallmouth in it. Like I said, I lost one when Christy won. That was an absolute freak of nature. And so who knows? Maybe someone will catch one when we're there.
All right.
I remember. I got to say one more thing before we leave. 2015, we're at Lake Havasu. I believe you were an Elite Series rookie. We were filming some Yamaha Maintenance Matters.
I remember that.
And we had everybody there. Paul Mueller was there. And I remember they were like, man, he's kind of a rookie. He's not very good at the public speaking thing. We got to get him through it. And you got through it. God, for where you are now, man, you just gave some absolute insane information for the past hour and your growth, not only on the water, but off the water in the marketing and providing the information that's always been in your head, dude. Highly impressed with what you've done over the past 5 years.
Thank you very, very much. I've been very blessed, man. Like I said, I just wanted to be able to survive this expensive learning curve and make a living doing it. And I have. So I feel very blessed to be able to be in this position that I'm in.
All right, man. Best of luck to you the remainder of the year. Hopefully you'll be back on soon, Paul.
Thanks, guys.
All right, man. Take care. There you have it, Paul Mueller. Wow. That was a way to kick off the week right there.
Man, I would love to have gone back and maybe explored that glow stuff a little bit more. I feel like there might have been a nugget that kind of got passed over a little bit.
You think we're going to get thumbs down on that interview? Is thumbs down guy going to be out there?
I don't know, but there was something there with the glow. I think there was something there.
Yeah.
I mean, look at how, you know what? You've had the Tight Lines UV and you've had, you want to throw laser lure in there? Throw laser lure in there, but it's not a glow deal. But what I'm talking about is, look at night fishing, at walleye fishing, up north, deep fishing. Look at the bioluminescence in saltwater. There's a lot of other tentacles in fishing and deep water where that glowing is very key. And I feel it's really overlooked in bass fishing. And I haven't ever really thought about it, but dude, like I said, if Paul Mueller's taking an extra step to put paint on a jig head, there's a reason why he's doing it. Because that guy loves throwing a naked jig head, Mark. You ever thought about it?
No.
You ever thought about, man, I wonder if here's what you do. Maybe I need to change colors. Maybe I need to go heavier. Maybe I need to go lighter. How often have you ever said, maybe I need to make it glow?
Yeah. Wow. Just, man, if you missed part of that interview, you need to go back because it is well worth it. There were some diamonds in there that you can pick up on from so many of the things that he had experienced over the last couple of events that he passed on to the fans. So greatly appreciate Paul being on the show today. All right, a couple of things real quick. As I mentioned, we're going to have Brandon Polinick on tomorrow. The other thing is a big shout out and a thank you to all the people that participated in the watch party that we had on Thursday with Mark Menendez. Now, I have a bit of news, Matthew.
Okay.
Mark and I have talked numerous times since then, and with the condition that Mark is in with his back, he has offered to be a part of BTL for a fourth show, maybe 2, maybe 3 times a month.
Okay.
So on Thursdays, and we're working out the scheduling, it really all depends on his treatment and some of the stuff that he has going on. But there will be some weeks where we will have a fourth show of which Mark will take part in that show. And then we're also working, hopefully, to get another watch party for the St. Clair event.
And the BTL market.
And the what?
The market.
Oh, yeah. I'm still working on that, man. I have some challenges that I'm working on with that. But I'm about 85-90% on that.
I gotta give
now.
it to you. I went back. I watched the replay. I was doing the barrel racing thing when it was on. But you did good at the Apex games. That went off without a hitch. And then it was really cool with Mark. And then all the guests that were able to be on with your new technology. It was super cool. It's cool to talk and interact with other people who love this game as much as we do.
Yeah. It was and what a great job that Mark did. The value and the insight that Mark Menendez brought to that show was priceless. With so much experience on Champlain and his insight, and we were on John Cox a lot, which kind of feel bad for him because he made that run to Ticonderoga, just did not pan out. But some of the insight that Mark gave on what John was targeting in Ticonderoga, it was priceless. So a big shout out, big thank you to Bass, to Jim Sexton, to Bruce Aiken once again, and obviously to Mark Menendez for making that thing happen. And hopefully we can do it again.
Apparently I'm the only one who's not on the Glow Bait train because the YouTube instant feedback, everyone's like, oh yeah, there's this bait and that bait, and it works here and it works there, and we've caught him there. And
wow. That's
next thing you'll know, glow in the dark tungsten.
Yeah. All right, man. That's going to wrap it up today. Tomorrow, Brandon Polinick. Wednesday, get those electronics questions ready. The man behind the bass tank is going to be in
Caught
studio.
the heck out of them with Jason Christie during their live last week.
Yeah.
No big ones. They caught big ones before and after they were live. It's how it always works out.
That's how it works out. All right, everybody. Be safe. That's it. We are out of here.